Perfect. And
So today I'm joined by Raymond Burke of recently the Power Wash store in Tallahassee, and also Spraywash Academy, a guy who has built and sold a successful washing business. I think he's a thought leader in the industry. And we're going to talk a little bit today about his story. Ray, thanks for hopping on and having this chat, man.
Oh, Brad, thanks so much for having me. And yeah, as you mentioned, I as of last May, we under contract and sold our business that had been our baby for about 13 years or so, Spraywash Exterior Cleaning. And we were purchased by the nation's largest fleet wash, and were assimilated into one of their units. We kept some managerial contracts for a while. In fact, Tanya is still over there as a consultant. And then we said, what the heck, we're too young to retire, and what do I know best? And I know contractors, I know the industry, I know what people need. I understand the pain points that contractors go through, so we opened Power Wash Store Tallahassee.
And you said it's been kind of wild, so that's exciting. That's exciting to be opening a new chapter.
It really is. It's some neat stuff.
So before we get into too much of the details of kind of where things have ended up, because I want to hear more about it, I want to hear kind of all how it unfolded. Let's go back to the beginning.
Okay.
Of all this. How did you get started in business for yourself?
Man.
What made you do that? Is it always been that way, or did you have a moment where you're like, I want to work for myself? How did that happen?
Well, the way I got started in the washing industry, and I was literally so I was a real estate developer in the 2000s.
Okay.
2009, I gave back properties in 3 different states. I literally went flat broke. I mean, and it didn't help that my wife was a mortgage banker either, so her industry was seeing a similar downturn. She didn't own her own gig at that point, so she was employed from someone else, whereas we had RB development, and we were just busted, so I literally took the last little few remaining dollars we had. I took the Polaris pump off of my pool for a rinse pump. I went to, and I can't remember if it was either Home Depot or Lowe's, but I got some crappy little 2.8 pressure washer.
Yeah.
Cobbled together a little rig, started knocking on doors going, hey, can I do your driveway? That's how we started in 2009.
Wow. Well, I can relate to that story. My dad was a real estate developer in 2008. I was building houses with him at that time frame. So I feel the pain.
Yeah.
It's funny. I talked to some people who had just jobs in other industries, and I'm not sure they even knew 2008 happened outside of a few news blips about the stock market going down. But if you were in the construction industry, if you were in the development, if you were in real estate, man, you felt it. It just, the music stopped playing. It was hot.
Handed to you. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really bad. So we won't get into all those stories, although we could talk for a long time on all that. So you made a shift. That's hard. So I mean, real estate development, that's a serious gig. And you made a shift, and now you're knocking on doors, washing driveways. If you don't mind me asking.
Humbling would be a very good word to describe it.
Would you say humbling?
It was extremely humbling. I mean, I went from owning, large tracts of lands and hunting and fishing and really living what I consider to be just a very charmed life to draining a couple of retirement accounts, because I was on a fast track for retirement at 40 years old thinking, this is amazing, and we've got, and then it was, almost the typical gambler mentality of if I just hold out a little bit, I can see this through, and started taking the money that we had stashed away and not playing with the house's money, playing with my own money on a bad streak there. It's kind of funny because I just ran into a very good friend who was a developer and builder himself, and we were talking a couple of years after that, and he said, "Man," he said, "I know that you got just pounded." He said, I gave the bank jingle mail, and he literally took the keys of the houses that he had built with construction loans on there, dropped them off at the bank, and said, "Here, take it. Don't want it anymore. There's no way I can physically continue to pay for this and make a profit at it."
Yeah.
And then the real irony of that, within 3 years coming out of the recession, the bank gave those properties back to him, restored all of his construction lines, and he was down and out for a couple of weeks or a couple of years, but he was able to bounce right back to it, where I was more, no, I can make this work. I can power through this. And sometimes you just got to know when to say enough,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of wisdom in that, Ray.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and some people bounced back, and some of us got dragged through the mud a little harder for various reasons. So, talking about the shift, we will have the conversation about 2008 another time.
Yeah.
Talking about that shift, you get started, you're out there, you're doing some washing. How'd it go? What happened?
Oh, I had the door slammed in my face a lot of times and just kept on, But it's also one of those things where, and through our school and whenever people ask me advice, I get a little on the tough love of, when people are like, "Oh, well, I'm out here marketing, I'm out here doing this." And it's like, well, let me see the bottoms of your shoes. And if you've still got tread on the bottom of your shoes, you haven't been marketing enough. I mean, we went out and did door hangers, and you need to be wearing the soles off of it, 500, 800 a day that you're out there, putting on, and we didn't do the car flyer, toss out clips out the windows like some people do in this industry. We were doing it kind of more hardcore style of knocking on doors and leaving a door hanger out there for them. So.
How long did it take you to really start to get things going, though? And did you do it as a few months? Did it take a couple of years? How was it?
Within a year, right shortly thereafter, a year, I had gotten busy enough to where I couldn't handle it with myself, and then I had hired a helper, and then we got busy enough for that. I put two helpers out and on a rig, and then at the same time, I told Tanya, and Tanya was really, she had changed careers at this point. She was not happy. So we're going to say a year and a half into it, and she said, I said, "Tanya, I think we're on to something. We can grow. We can make something amazing here. I know you hate your job. Why don't you come to work with Spraywash?" And so she tendered her resignation. She was at that point in the hospitality industry as sales director for a hotel.
Okay.
She left there, and as I say, the rest is history. So she took over commercial sales and then transformed into office management and bookkeeping and all the crap that I didn't want to do. So
right. So having Tanya come on board, that was the big shift.
It's huge. Yeah, absolutely huge. I would say that there were three seminal points of my life that changed the trajectory of my business, and the first and foremost was being able to partner with my wife. I don't want to say hire my wife because she certainly isn't subordinate to me. I think she chose.
I work with my wife as well. I understand. Yeah.
I'd say she more or less allowed me to stay on. Tim Hazelton, the inventor of the proportioner and Apple Wash, is here in my shop with me, and he's laughing in the background. He knows Tanya real well. But getting off the truck and getting professional office space, those were probably the three biggest things that at each one we were on this, and then it went up a little bit more and up a little bit more, and it just changed the trajectory of our lives.
Do you mind let's unpack a little bit of that? What how did you know when it was time to get off the truck, and kind of walk me through that a little bit?
Time to get off the truck. Gosh, that's, a part of me just says you'll know it. You'll just know it. And whenever, and maybe it was, I realized it whenever I said, gosh, I want to grow this business, but there are exactly, the one great equalizer. They say that, the two things are certain is death and taxes, but there's something else that's certain. And that is that there's only 24 hours in a day, and there's 7 days in a week. And there is only so much that you can do as a single owner operator or with one truck and helpers out there as compared to whenever you have the force multipliers of multiple vehicles, multiple rigs out there helping you do the work. I mean, you could have a team of 10 amazing salespeople, but if you're one rig and you're the guy that's I got to be on every job, those salespeople aren't going to be able to really help you because you're not going to, you'll be booked out for 12 months at a time.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. So what role did you step into when you came off the truck? What was that next role for you in the business growing it?
I was still in a truck. I mean, oddly enough, and it was more of, okay, so get two guys, I've had an assistant working under me. I'm going to promote him to a lead tech. Now I'm going to hire him an assistant. We're going to get him trained. And then it was me working by myself. And then it was, so I call that getting off the truck, but I guess it really was expanding what I was doing. Then eventually, after I had 2 full-time trucks out there, and I found multiple, primary technicians, at that point I really did step away from the truck and as an administrator, sales, mechanic, keeping things running. But then also, we would always keep I would say a secondary, but then a tertiary truck out there so that for emergency jobs, for touch-ups, for things that I needed to do, that because we would stay booked. Springtime, it was nothing to be booked out 6 weeks at a time. Yeah. And then even at when we sold our business, we had, Tim, we have 4 I think I had 4 trucks, 4 full-time trucks, and then a backup truck out there.
Right. And just for everybody listening to this, I have no idea. Tertiary is a very real estate term.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Sorry. And I mean it like, primary, secondary, tertiary. I mean, as a redundant backup to the backup,
Right.
I feel that any system that you have should have backups to the backups,
Okay. So Go ahead. I was just saying.
I was explaining to someone the other day that came in the store, and he was like, well, I don't downstream. And I was like, do you have a pressure washer? Yes. I was like, well, why don't you downstream? And he's like, well, because I have this 12-volt pump here. And I was like, it's going to die. It's not a matter of if it's going to die, it's when it's going to die. I said, you are hurting yourself if you don't go out there and have an additional method of spraying bleach onto a property, if that's what you're doing, if you're killing organics on a property, if you don't have an additional way of spraying that and your primary system goes down, you're down. I mean, we always carried 3 different ways of doing it. We had an X-Jet, we had a downstreamer, and we had a booster pump on all of our trucks. Going back to a house is, having to go back to a house is the most expensive thing in the world to your company.
Right. Yeah. All your money is made with the time that you're paying somebody to be there and up and down the road and et cetera, et cetera. So the third thing you said that was a big turning point, a big pivot point for you was getting office space.
Yes.
Why? Why did that make a difference?
Because it took me from a home-based business to a real business. It even gave my employees a sense, a little spring in their step. They're not working for a mom and pop organization. They're working for a real business, and they had keys to the doors. And, you know, it also changed in that, like, a truck would come in for repairs. And at this point, we're actually doing hood cleaning as well. And, you know, we would go up, okay, so the hood, you know, it sucked to have the hood cleaners, like, show up at my house at midnight, you know, and lights coming in, you know, our property. We has, you know, a decent, you know, little 3-acre house, and you know, lights coming down the driveway and waking everybody up. And so now it's like they could, and then I can't tell you how many times I've laid in a mud puddle working on a piece of equipment. Now all of a sudden I've got a chain hoist and a forklift, and I can get crap done, and they call me in the middle of the night and say, hey, the hot washer's down at 3 a.m. Well, I can be in there, you know, meet me back at the shop, and by 5 a.m. we're back up running, and they can finish their job. So
right. So you had an office space and a shop space.
Yeah,
so you kind of had a new headquarters.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, that makes sense. So you feel like not only did it allow you to be more efficient, but it really made a difference in the culture.
Huge
of how
difference in the
felt.
culture. Yeah, huge difference in the culture with the people.
That's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
So your business grew a lot. I mean, I think you had a very good success story. I mean, you made an exit. You made a successful exit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really interested. At what point in this journey did you decide, you know what, I want to teach others how to do this? I mean, you have Spraywash Academy. How did that come into play? When was that born?
It was probably about 5 years ago, and my teaching partner, Doug Gore, and a lot of people on Facebook know him as Dougie Do. We just got tired of seeing such the wrong way of doing things out there, and realized there's not a lot of standardized education. And you know, we created a Facebook forum, then we created some formal classes, and we started, you know, and then from there it morphed into online classes, and then it morphed into an annual membership type, you know, scenario that people can go to. I remember Thad Eckhoff came to me 2017 or so, and he was, at that point, he was the owner of the huge convention, you know, which is our industry's largest pressure washing window cleaning convention, and you know, 15 to 1800 people there. And he says, Ray, he said, I've watched you teach before. He said, I want you to make us something amazing for the huge convention, and like a, because we're limited to 45-minute to an hour-long classes there. So our biggest class, called Plant and Property Protection, was born out of that, and the huge had us there, and you know, we charged an additional tuition for it. And it was literally the first time we did it was a 5-hour class, and teaching people, yeah, it's really easy. I mean, it's really easy to go buy a pressure washer, and it's really easy to spray bleach or degreaser on things, but how do you keep from burning out electric sockets? How do you keep from destroying other electronics? How are you dealing with sensitive plants? How are you dealing with paint issues? You know, because you go into so many of these industry forums on YouTube and on Facebook, and the standard answer is, oh, I'd use 50% bleach. And it's absolutely horrible to see that information out there. And, you know, I say you can be anything you want to be on the internet, but it amazes me that so many people choose to be stupid. But you know, you have people. I go, you know, and I monitor a lot of online little things, and you know, it's somebody will say something like, okay, doing a bid to do a parking garage, and I need to know how much you would charge and how to wash it. You know, and then you ask the question in there, the group, because you'll have like 8 or 10 comments on here. Oh, well, I think I'd do this. I think I'd do that. And you'd say, you know, sincere, honest question here. How many of you guys giving out advice have ever actually done a parking garage? And you know, then they'd get all pissy in their response. Well, I haven't, but I've heard this, I've heard that, and it's like, so you're dispensing advice, not actually having done this before, you know.
Yeah.
And that was part of our where we wanted to make the education on here and going, we're going to first off take out the conjecture. We're going to take out the he said, she said, I've heard. I mean, when we start talking about synthetic stucco and Drive It as the manufacturer, what does Drive It say how to clean their stuff?
Yeah.
What is the process for cleaning synthetic stucco? Because somewhere out there is a manufacturer's specification on that, and it's uncovering it and finding it out.
So what change or impact have you seen by pouring this knowledge into people and training?
Well, I got a lot of people with my logo on their shirt running around out there, so there is that. And I'm real flippant, and I'm humble that people actually take the time to listen to me. But I do hear it all the time that, Ray, gosh, you've helped my business. Ray, thank you. Ray, how would you do this? And then part of the thing with Spraywash Pro, our membership group that we have, we allow people to call Doug and me to say, hey, I'm looking at this hotel. Hey, I'm looking at this. But just this morning, I was talking to a guy up in one of the East, Indiana or Illinois, and he's looking at a 6-story office building. And we were discussing, hey, here's the process for doing this. And, and also the office manager wanted me to put why, she wanted me to write on the estimate to help sell it to the building owner. Why would we even clean this? What is the benefits for cleaning this?
Yeah.
So I spent 30, 40 minutes with him going over process, method, and also helping to try to sell the job as well, giving some ideas that I would do, on there.
Well, I'm sure that helps guys a lot to be able to lean into that resource.
I've heard so many times, people have said, hey, with the inspiration that we've seen, with the stuff that we've seen going on, you've given us you've challenged to get out of the comfort level, and we've taken on projects that we would not have ordinarily taken on because we knew we had a friend in the business that could help us out here. We knew we had somebody we could turn to for advice.
Right. That's cool.
Yeah.
So what's the future for Spraywash Academy? Where do you want to? Where do you want to take it?
We're really developing a lot of online stuff. I think the future is just plugging along, just like the past. I mean, other than we're going to have a lot more. The COVID pandemic showed us a great deal of how online is important, because just like that, face-to-face meetings can be, canceled.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that is the world we live in these days.
Yeah, it is, and we're seeing, now the pressure washing industry in general is going through some pain and having the issues of supply chain problems that we're having stemming from 2 years ago. A lot of people don't realize that, most of the brass made in the world, and if you have a pressure washing pump, I almost guarantee you look on that pump somewhere, there's going to be an Italian marking in there. It may be assembled in the U.S., but most likely it was the foundry it came out of was from Italy. They handle most of the brass in the world, and they were really shut down hard. So we're seeing, and then Japan, Honda engines are something like we're only going to get a 25% of the allotment for the U.S. for Honda engines that we got, pre-2019. So it's some interesting changes.
It is. I'm trying to think the best way to ask this. What kind of impact, and what do you see happening over the next year? I mean, how do you see it playing out?
Well, as far as the industry in general, or equipment-wise? because I have some thoughts, especially on the industry in general.
I want to hear about the industry in general.
Okay. I think that the guys that are coming into the industry that are competing on price are going to get their teeth kicked in and are going to be selling their equipment sooner than later. And here's why I say that. The industry is getting a lot of saturation at this point. There's a lot of guys out there that want to compete on price. And we were never a price competition type business at all. We were always, so you had bottom, middle, top, and we were somewhere in there between the middle, upper middle to top. I mean, a lot of times we were the highest price company in a lot of things. A lot of these guys that are, and I mean, I use the words guy very colloquially. I know there's plenty of women in this business at all. I know some absolute huge, inspiration on that. So let me be politically correct. Gendered people. How's that? Oh crap! That's pissing off the trannies. If you're competing on price and being the person that the $99 house wash, the $149 house wash appeals to, you have to understand that during an economic tightening, those are the people that are going to be affected the most by inflation. Those are the people that are going to not be able to, that $99, the person that a $99 house wash appeals to, they don't have the spare $99 at that point. I mean, it's you're dealing with the lower on the socioeconomic scale you are, the more these price increases and inflation and higher gas and higher food is really going to hurt people. So there's always a need for quality service. There's always a need for government service providers, commercial service providers. Those people are not impacted as much, and also the rich, the wealthy, the upper echelon things, they're not as affected as much by rising prices and inflation.
Well, I think that's probably, well, I know it is good advice regardless of what's going on. Competing on price is a race to the bottom.
Yeah.
But with when you add things like inflation and when you add these other variables, it's going to uncover that faster. Right. I guess is maybe even a way to say it.
Brad, I always like to in our classes, I always give the comparison of I've got Golden Corral.
Yeah.
And Ruth's Chris or Shula's, I've got both of them serve meat.
Yeah.
And Golden Corral, I go in there at $14.95, and I'm kind of disgusted with myself whenever I walk out of a Golden Corral. Not because the food's bad, but the food is absolutely 100% mediocre in there, and I've eaten too much. I've kind of pigged out. The macaroni and cheese casserole was great. But it's nothing memorable. I have never once in my life sat there and said, God, I went to that Golden Corral once in Orlando, and it was just jam up. I can name to you every Ruth's Chris that I've ever been to.
Yeah.
And so I'm $14.95 here, and then I'm $300 for the meal here at Ruth's Chris. And literally the minute that I walk out of the Ruth's Chris, I am planning to go to I'm looking forward to the next time I can go to that Ruth's Chris.
Yeah.
But there's be Ruth's Chris. Don't be Golden Corral. I mean, they both have business models, but whenever you're the service guy out there, and you're a 5 truck or under service guy, you're going to be a lot better off being Ruth's Chris.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. I like that advice. I like that. Be Ruth's Chris.
Yes.
Everybody likes a steak that's been cooked in that 500-degree butter
Right.
and the cream spinach that they have. And I mean,
Oh my God, yes.
no, it's
And think
memorable.
about this. Think about the Ruth's Chris example there too, because you can even go on and say, and they tell you how they serve this on a 500-degree sizzling plate,
Yeah.
and they tell you how it's been dry aged for 24 days, and they're going to tell you about the wine selection, and they're going to tell you about, the locally sourced spinach, and used half and half cream. And they're selling the sizzle, not the steak. Golden Corral's selling the steak.
Yeah.
Whereas Chris is selling that sizzle.
Yeah. Well, my mouth is watering now, and I'm figuring out what I need to do to have a date with my wife again.
Right.
Chris.
That's right.
So one other thing I did want to touch on, don't want to go too long, don't want to keep too much of your time, but kind of going back to you sold your business, and I think
Right.
this is something kind of worth talking about, because I think the ultimate goal for a business owner should be to have a successful exit.
Yeah.
We build something, and if you can't walk away from it with something to show for it, I think that's a miss and an opportunity. So tell me a little bit about how that came about, and maybe even why you feel like you were able to have a successful sale, or just anything you want to share about that experience.
Well, it came about in a real strange way, that because we had started talking about going, where do what is our exit plan? What is the exit strategy on that? And I think you need an exit strategy I don't think you need an exit strategy. It's not my opinion. I mean, it's success, and so I have two daughters that had no, they love spending the money that the business generated, but they have no interest in running the business whatsoever. They both have successful careers on their own, didn't have any sons to take over this. And, Tanya and I were talking, and so in 2021, we had generated $1.2 million in income. And you take a business that size, and it's the year before that, we were around those numbers. At any given 12-month period, we would be somewhere between, $875,000 to $1.1 million over the past, 4 or 5 years or so. But you look at a business of that size, and now you suddenly have a problem with actually disposing of it. This isn't where a lot of guys that are sitting around with $1 million cash are going, I really feel like working my butt off for 14 hours a day, 7 days a week to generate this. There's not a lot of service businesses that, without real estate, that are selling for that kind of money. Now, you get to be a huge organization, and I've heard something like once you get past $20 million, now there's actually a larger market to buy things like that. But that $750,000 to about $1.5 million becomes just an absolute. It's like climbing in the mountains. You get that death zone, that area where you're starving for capital, and you're starving for, I feel the same way that you're kind of starving for a buyer at that point too, because it's going to take a special buyer to come in there and be able to stroke a check for 3.5 times your earnings.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, your net earnings,
Right.
a year. So when we were approached, we weren't even necessarily quite ready. We had talked about testing the water, and it happened just boom like that. And we're like, there was part of me going, I would really like to keep this for a while longer and sock a few $100,000 away, because let's face it, this can be a very profitable business if you do it correctly. And we enjoyed an amazing lifestyle for the last several years at it. But I also had the reality of who else is out there that can buy us? I mean, I'm in a relatively small market, even though we're the capital of Florida. I'm only about 270,000 people in my town. I don't have my metro market area, my 5-county area is only like 345,000 people. So I'm not big, you know. So when this larger company that wanted to do a westward expansion came in, and they were able to take our contracts and our relationships and literally have a boom, you know, ready to go business, it made a lot of sense for them. And it made a lot of sense for us.
So kind of just happened. And I think that's something to think about in the changing climate, because that's a change that's happening in the industry. There is consolidation happening across all the service sectors. So there will be opportunities that didn't exist a few years ago. You know, you go back just a few years and private equity wasn't purchasing anything less than, you know, 8 or 10 million or whatever that number was. It was a much bigger number. Right. But now things are changing, which means more guys will be able to build businesses that are sellable in the next few years.
I agree.
Than before.
And, you know, it's funny you mentioned, though, about the private equity, and there's been a few relatively famous private equity buyouts here in the years prior to me selling with some guys, and I've talked to some of them, and those private equity firms have gotten their teeth kicked in as far as buying that business and then thinking they were going to run it as a cash cow, because the owner of the business, whether you're a active hands-on owner or like me, and in the office owner, still very active, still very hands-on, but might not be on a truck every day, the owner has a lot to do with it, so much to do with it. And I think that's one of those things that some of the private equity firms are going and going, we need to make sure this owner stays around for a little while to create this transition. Like we're not going to go in here and say, here's $1 million and we want you to hang around for 2 weeks. That's not going to happen. I mean, my contract was for 6 months. Tanya got 18 months on hers, because Tanya's the client retention. And then the other, and I'm still maintaining an amazing relationship with this company, and they have me go over and train their employees and train, because we were extremely efficient at what we did. And then, things like, right behind me on my shoulder, the proportioner right there and that booster pump. I've actually got, one of their subsidiaries is they're amazed at how good those pumps were and how efficient they could work. And they're about to change over 30 trucks to that type of pumping system right there. Because, that's how we were able to post up the numbers that we did with, only the 4 truck. Yeah, because we could do, because let's face it, $250,000 per truck, maybe in some instances, $300,000 per truck. That's what you can really pretty much do on a truck, I feel, in this industry.
And that's good advice for people on, that's what we're talking about, but that is really solid advice for people. So last question, it did work out good for you, but if you could go back and would you have done anything differently to prepare yourself to make that exit? Would you have built differently? Is there something that if you go back and change it, is there anything you would have done different to be ready to sell? Or something you think was important that you did, whether you realized it or not, and that made it.
I'm trying to think if I would have done it differently. Yeah, I would have, because I would have structured the deal, and I think this is what they really prefer to do, but we were one of their first acquisitions of a successful company. They had bought several defunct, no, I don't want to say defunct, because God, I wouldn't want anybody to say, oh, he's disparaging my underperforming companies, were guys who really wanted, I just got to get out, buy my equipment, buy my routes, Yeah. Whereas with me, they bought a with Tanya and I, they bought a fully functional, profitable, amazing turnkey company.
Mm-hmm.
I would say amazing. Somebody, Tim, there, I wouldn't say amazing. I would go and I would have actually structured my exit to be longer, and I would have put in some revenue goals. I would have put in some things going, all right, guys, you want to play? Let's play. I'm going to raise, not only are we going to sell, and we're going to do the $1.2 million this year, we're going to raise this up. We're going to do $1.4 million over the next year. And I want I'm going to have some skin in the game, and I'm going to want, some extra money on this bonus, and then you'll get to keep the benefit of these extra clients that we brought in for the rest of your life. So I would have put in some goals, some benchmarks to reach with some accelerated bonus money in there.
Okay. So you just
I would have personally stuck around longer and kept more. I would have just kept more skin in the game there.
Right. Right. Well, I think that's a really interesting thing, and I don't know where someone's going to be at when they hear this soon or down the road, but I love hearing the other side of the story, because the idea of sticking around is almost like a bad word.
Right.
During that, people are like, I don't want to have to stick around. That's like getting put in prison. It doesn't have to be. It can be a really awesome opportunity.
It doesn't have to be,
Yeah,
and just practically speaking, you're not going to, I don't know if you know Brandon Vaughn, who runs, the Conquer Group. He sold his. And, Brandon's an amazing guy, but Brandon was real quiet about it. But Brandon had to stick around, I think, for 6 months to a year on there. Any company that's worth its salt in buying you, whenever you're $1 million company, is going to, nobody's just out there writing checks for $1 million going, here, give me the keys to the truck,
Yeah.
And, and I want to go back, talk about exit strategy.
Okay.
So you've either got to find the company to buy you, or you're going to have to start grooming one of your techs and have that serious conversation of, is this a business that you would like to buy? Yeah. Is this something you would like to go into? Is this something that would interest you? And have a trust where you probably do some financing in there or take part of their paycheck. But if you were just to go out there and finance your business blue sky, because like I said, there's not going to be a lot of bank loans on this. But if you were to just go out there and owner finance this for somebody, just 6 months of bad service, and they could take what you spent a decade building and run it into the ground.
Right. So it takes some foresight. If you're going to do it within, it takes some foresight and some planning, and it's going to happen over a period of time because, like you said, people that are just going to come write you the check, there's not a huge line of them for sure.
Right.
For sure. Well, I think that's awesome. I really appreciate all this. This was a great conversation. I appreciate, the things that you shared and the wisdom, and, I'm so happy for the success that you're having, Ray. You are, you're obviously an asset to the industry.
Oh, I appreciate that, and I do love this industry, so I enjoy it. I really do.
And I loved hearing about where you came from. I appreciate that we share a common root, and it's funny how sometimes a really tough period, you can make it into a good period. There can be a silver lining. You made a shift, and some really good things happen, and I don't know how much different or better or worse than what you imagined them, but I think that's something to keep in mind. I feel like that's an important part.
I never would have thought this would have led me to this and doing what I do, and golly, I love it, and you just roll with the punches, you take the good with the bad, and I saw somebody earlier, I saw something somewhere where saying, I never lose, I either win or I learn. There's a lot of truth to that.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for being on, Ray.
Absolutely.
And I wish you the best in your endeavor with your new retail business. That's really cool. It's a new chapter. New
It is. It
opportunities.
is. And like I said, feel free to holler at me anytime. I'm still involved in this industry, and we're still teaching and still, we're still here. So happy to come back on if you ever want to talk about some other things or trends or anything that we're seeing out there.
I would love that. I'd love that. We'll definitely get back together and do this again. All right. Well,
Cool.
thanks, Ray. And
Right.
that's the show, guys. We'll see you next time.